everyone, it's Rita with Everything Homemade, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make sourdough bread. If you don't have a culture for sourdough, definitely click on this video. I go step by step on how to make a sourdough culture. Two different methods, simple and easy. If you can mix two things together, you can do this, and check out that video. The link will be in the description box below, and then proceed with this video. So all you need for this video is your sourdough culture and some water and some flour. And I've got flour in my flour container right here, and I am just using whole wheat flour. You can definitely use spelt, you can use commute, you can even use rye. All the methods, it's gonna be the same. So if you want to change up the flour, go right ahead. So let's get started. What you need to do is, first of all, have your culture. Let's open this up. And you can see that there is a little bit of water looking at the top, and that's just fine. Let's just get a little bit of a close-up here. There we go. Okay, so this is just fine. If it was darker, that just means that your culture is hungry and needs to be fed. Sometimes you'll see it almost black looking, and that's still fine. It just has more alcohol in it. Just dump that off and use your culture. It's no problem. I will be doing a troubleshooting video coming up as well, but that's no problem. This is just separating. It's been in the fridge for a week, so it needs to be fed. And so all I do is mix that in with a clean wooden spoon. There we go. So you just mix that in, and then what I'm going to do is just take a tablespoon out. Now this recipe is for 1 loaf. This was a challenge because I always make my recipes like 6 loaves, but I figure there's not as many people make 6 loaves of bread at a time. So I narrowed this, I got this down to 1 loaf, really nice recipe, and you can like multiply this however big you want to go after this. So basically I'm taking a tablespoon of culture out here, just like that, and I'm going to just put that into my bowl, like so. Then what I'm going to do is just set that aside for a moment and go right back to my culture, because I like doing this right away so I don't forget to feed it. And I have some room in this container. Now if you didn't have any room in this container, you might want to take some out, and this is a good time where I feed it to the compost or to my pigs, because sometimes you just have too much in here and not enough room to feed, but it's really good for the compost pile. So what I'm going to do is add a 1/2 cup of whole wheat flour. This is freshly milled. And then a 1/2 cup of water. Whatever you do, you're always a 1-to-1 ratio between the two. And I'm just going to refresh this. Now I just took this culture right out of the fridge, and it warms up and activates so fast that you don't have to really worry about warming this up for 24 hours. I mean, the culture is so strong. And so I'm just going to mix that up, and my culture is now fed. And I a lot of times just put this right back in the fridge, and remember, it'll eat it slowly, and I find that way it lasts long. And you can see the bubbles right here. I mean, it's super healthy culture. And so now that this is fed, I'm just going to put the lid on it and just put it off to the side. Okay, to our bowl here with the culture. So remember, this is 1 tablespoon of culture that I put in here. Now I am going to put in 2 cups of whole wheat flour. So this is a 1/2 cup measuring scoop. So I need 4 of these to make 2 cups. So there we go. Now we got 2 cups of whole wheat flour, and what I'm going to do is put 2 cups of just room temperature water. And you just want to mix it around just like so. And if there's any flour lumps, you just want to smooth that out. And this is what you're going to do for the first day. How simple was that? Mixing water and flour and culture together. And so what's going to happen here is that culture is going to wake up real quick from being in the fridge, and it's going to eat all of the phytic acid that is in here. It's going to start breaking it down, and this more of a liquid looking mix here is going to change its texture by tomorrow. You're going to see bubbles. You're going to see it come right alive. So what you want to do now is put a cloth on this and let it sit for 24 hours on your counter. And that's really important. You gotta let it have that time for that culture to grow. So all I'm gonna do is put a tea towel. I love using my tea towels. I folded it in half and I'm just putting it over my bowl. I just got some binder clips here. I'm just clipping it on. And now I'm just gonna let that culture do its thing. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a wired cooling rack on top of my bowl because I have cats in the house, and this is my trick to cat proof. Otherwise I'll have cats sleeping in my bowl, and that's so not cool. This way, if they end up jumping up on my counter and they walk across, guess what? They walk across this and don't wreck my bread. So that's how I have this set up. You know, if you don't have animals in the house, just omit that step. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to place it right on top of my other bowl that I am making our weekly pancakes. And that will be another video for later on and for a bread cookbook. But this is kind of my section where I am soaking or doing sourdough things with, and it also allows me to stack things up to save space in my small kitchen. So what I'm going to do again, put this aside for 24 hours. So this is 24 hours later. Let's take a look. Perfect. Oh, look at that. This is gorgeous looking. Okay, let's get a closer look. So what you can see here are little bubbles, and that means that the culture is living, it's growing, it's eating all that phytic acid, it's doing exactly what I wanted to do. It's pre-digesting your flour, making it easier to digest. And take a look. It has totally changed consistency, and you can see it's kind of almost like sticky, liquidy, and it totally looks lighter. And you can see even when I'm stirring it, there's bubbles. Like, it is living. And I'm so excited over culture because it's just so cool to me how you can use it in everyday baking to make things healthier for your body. And so I'm just gonna mix this up really well. And now we're going to add the rest of the ingredients, and we're going to get it ready for the first proofing. So the rest of the ingredients is really, really simple. We're going to just add in some more flour and a little bit of salt. And I'm just going to add, I use a full mineralized salt, natural minerals. I really love it. And I'm going to add in a half a teaspoon in here of salt. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in 2 cups of flour. So there is 1 cup. And there's 2 cups. And this is just organic, whole wheat, freshly milled flour. And I'm going to mix that up. When you add in your flour, it is just like your sourdough starter. You're feeding that culture. And I really, really like the analogy of soldiers or an army, because the soldiers are the culture, and you got to keep feeding it for that strong army, right? You got to keep it going. So I add that first 2 cups in, and then I just see where we're at. And a cat just flew a ball across the kitchen. Anyway, and so it looks like you can see how this dough, when you move it around, you see how it just kind of doesn't hold its shape. It needs a little bit more flour, otherwise your loaves are gonna kind of, you knead it together and then they're just kind of gonna go like this. Ugh. And you don't want that, so that tells me we're not quite at the consistency that I want it. So I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup more of flour. Now at this point, you know, if you find it a little bit hard to stir, you can definitely just use your hands and get it mixed in really, really well. I have to do that when I multiply this recipe by 6, because I can't just stir it with a wooden spoon. 1 loaf is fine. When you're dealing with a bread bowl that's huge, you know, 6 times the size of this bowl, it's a bit hard to stir. So that's getting better. Now you'll also notice with sourdough that you're never gonna get away from the stickiness. It's gonna be stickier than you know, your regular white flour, or even using a store-bought yeast. It's gonna be a stickier dough. So you're just gonna have to accept that. So this is not too bad. Consistency, you see how it's holding its shape? After I move it, it is moving back a bit, but it does hold its shape. But when I touch it, it's a little bit too sticky. So let's add a little bit more flour. I'm gonna add another 1/2 cup. So right now we have added a total of 3 cups of flour. And now I'm just going to use my hands a little bit. And there we go, now we're getting it. And so you can just see, I'm just using my hand, I'm scraping it, and then I'm kind of folding it, scraping it, folding it, scraping it, folding, and then kind of pressing down in that motion. And you don't want to over knead, you just want enough where you're just gonna mix it in. So that would be perfect for our loaf. But you know what? We do not want to put this in a pan right now, because we want it to sit like this for at least another 6 to 8 hours, even 12 hours, depending on the heat. Now it's pretty warm in our house because it's the middle of summer, so the culture is really going to multiply fast. But in the Everything Stevia cookbook, I mentioned, you know, if the house is really, really warm, your culture is going to multiply faster and therefore eat up the phytic acid quicker. So it's going to rise faster. And if the house is cooler, it's going to just take a little longer. So, but usually, no matter what, I can get it between 6 to 12 hours, depending on the temperature. So this is perfect. You can see it's holding its shape. Now we need it to rise. We need that culture to eat up that phytic acid, because we just put fresh flour in here. And so we need to let it do its thing. So I'm going to put my towel back on, but I'm not going to clip it, because if you get a really good rise, what's going to happen is it's going to hit this towel, and if you clip it, it's got nowhere to go. We don't want it to hinder the rising process. So it's not going to rise crazy, but whenever you're at this point, you just don't want it to be clipped. We're only dealing with 1 loaf here, but you'd be surprised how much, if you get your sourdough to very active culture, how much it can rise. So same thing, we definitely don't want to put anything on top of this. Another trick that I use, because we cat board and we always have cats running around the house, is when I have an empty oven, I will put my bowl in the oven at this stage, not on, but I can get it to rise in there without the cats sleeping on top of my bowl, and that way it's safe and out of the way as well. So, and that's exactly what I'm going to do now, because we're at the height of our cat boarding. It's mid-July, so there's lots of cats in our house. And so I am actually going to let this rise in my oven for probably about 6 hours because it is warm today. So I will see you back in 6 hours. So 6 hours has elapsed and it's risen. We'll get to that in a moment, but first what we're going to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 177 degrees Celsius. Get that preheating. Then what you want to do is grab some bread pans. Now I have 2 here. This will make 1 big loaf or 2 small loaves. But I'm going to show you 2 different techniques for how to prepare your loaf pans. The first one is parchment paper, and that is just as simple as taking some parchment paper out, ripping it off. Make sure that you got your sides, okay, high enough. So you can kind of go like that, stick the loaf in here so that way it doesn't stick to the sides. That is option number 1. Now I'm just going to set that aside. Option number 2 is oil and flouring your pan, and you will notice that I will say this in the cookbook, either to use parchment paper or you can oil your sides or oil and flour. With breads, I find it that you need that flour. It creates that non-stick surface for it. So what I'm going to do is just brush in my oil. In this case, I'm using melted coconut oil. You can use olive oil if you'd like. You can use melted butter if you'd like. That's totally up to you. This way, with coconut oil, it's good for dairy-free people. Same with olive oil. So make sure you get everywhere. I tell my kids, go through the motion and be systematic, because the moment that you miss a spot that's where it's gonna stick. And so same thing, just go real nice, oil it, and then grab your flour. Now this little bit of flour in the pan is not that big of a deal. You get very little on your bread, so I wouldn't be too concerned. But what you want to do is go back and forth, then get your sides. Now if you make a mess and spill it, it's no big deal, because we're going to use this surface anyway to get the bread shaped. So you're going to put flour on here anyhow. So there you go, that is oiled and flour, and the excess flour, as you can see, the bran doesn't stick as well, and that's no big deal, that's just normal. So we're just gonna put that right back into our flour because it still can be used. So right now I'm gonna take my loaf pans and I'm just going to set them aside. Now the next thing we want to do is look at our bread that has risen. So look at that, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You can actually see the stretching of it, the bubbling. This is exactly what you want to see. It should have that really nice, sweet, sourdough smell, and this is just beautiful. So what you want to do is obviously get it out of the bowl and flour your surface. Now again, this little bit of flour, you could use sprouted wheat flour if you want. In this case, you can actually use a little coconut flour. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to use freshly milled flour here because the little bit of flour that gets on this bread is really minimal. But if you're really concerned about it, once again, you can use coconut flour, sprouted wheat flour, rice flour if you want. It's just to prevent it from sticking. So let's take a look. Before I even touch this any further, I'm just going to tip it here and get a close up. You see that? Look at that. That is the culture, you know, multiplying, digesting, bubbling, feeding. That is awesome. The other thing that I forgot to mention is always use a glass bowl. I should have mentioned this, and I'll put a note in front. Use a glass bowl. If you use a metal bowl, aluminum bowl, plastic bowl, this whole process won't work because those actually hinder the growth and you will flop this entire bread. So glass, 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 use glass. Okay, so what we want to do here is just take the dough out, and you can hear that beautiful sound of it. Just take it out. It's a little bit sticky, get prepared for that. And you'll notice this residue, okay? That's no problem. Just put some water in your bowl with hot water and it will come out clean. And so what you want to do, sometimes I just kind of press my hand down, get a little bit of flour so it's not as sticky. And what you want to do is I just flatten it out. And then I kind of roll it flat, roll, flatten, roll, move some flour, do it again. And this is a really nice soft dough. You can see that when I'm working it. It's not too sticky, but it is soft. And that's what you want. You don't want it really stiff. Now, I'm doing this a little bit more times because I'm talking here, and I just find this really relaxing to fold, press, fold, press. I guess the kid in me just likes to play with dough a little bit. But when you do this, you do that, a few times. Then what you want to do is do the final one and get it nice, and then you want to shape it. So I'm going to just shape it here. I'm just kind of bringing the sides. Now, if you have a different kneading technique, go right ahead. This is just what I like to do. And I'm moving it around where it's not going to stick to my surface. Now, the second that I stop, it's going to stick some more. But I'm going to have to stop because I got to get my pan. Now, I'm just going to use the flour method one because I like it while I'm making bread. And I am just going to go whoop it right in there. And now we're just going to wait 5 minutes. And waiting 5 minutes is all it needs. This is actually going to rise in that 5 minutes. Now, this is where a lot of people will flop the sourdough bread, is because they let this step over rise. They leave it for a half an hour to an hour before they put it in the oven. And you have then over risen your bread. This is living, this process goes way faster than your traditional, yeasted bread that they say, to put it in your pan and then wait half an hour and then put it in the oven. I find 5 minutes, because otherwise you're going to end up with itsy bitsy little bread that hasn't risen whatsoever. And that's not cool. I even, sometimes don't even wait the 5 minutes, and I just stick it in the oven because I am in such a rush. And it rises. The second that I leave it longer, or, get pulled away, let's say 15 minutes, 30 minutes, I flopped it. So this is where lots of people flop their recipes and don't understand that you do not have to wait that long. And I'm sorry for repeating that a few times, but I really, really want it to be stressed because I don't want you guys to flop your bread. So let's wait 5 minutes and then get it cooking. Look at that. It has risen the perfect amount, and in the oven we go. Set the timer to 1 hour. There we go. Start, and I'll see you back. Okay, the bread is done. Take a look at that beautiful color. Beautiful golden brown on top. Do is flip this over like that. You see how easy it came out of the pan? And that is because we oiled and floured it. It would come out just as easy with parchment paper as well. And what we're going to do now is just let it cool. So I'm just going to leave it here and let the bread cool. You don't want to cut fresh bread if you can help it, because it's really difficult to cut. You have to cut quite thick slices because otherwise it'll just, you know, crumble. You gotta let it set. I know there's nothing like fresh bread and some hot butter melted on it, but let it cool for 4 to 6 hours before slicing it. It's the evening here, so I am just going to let it cool, and tomorrow morning, so I will see you in the morning. It's the next day. The bread is obviously fully cooled off, and let's slice it up. Take a look at that. Oh, smells so good. Beautiful piece of bread. And let's put some toppings on it. So I really like nut butter. So this is some homemade hazelnut butter. So I'm just going to spread that on top. This bread is so good toasted as well. There we have it. Now I'm gonna grab some fresh cheese. I make homemade cheddar, and I have an entire series talking about how to make cheese, and I'll definitely put the link in the description below. What I like to do is I like to have a nut butter, and then I put a little bit of cheese on because I'm not eating sugar. And this is just absolutely delicious. Or I might have like some fresh butter and cheese, or even peanut butter. It's just a combination I like to have. And then we enjoy the fruits of our labor. That's absolutely delicious. What I really like is that it's still light enough. You know how sometimes you have sourdough bread that can be really dense. So this is somewhere in the middle. It's not like crazy fluffy and soft, let's say like a white bread, or even a store-bought whole wheat bread where, you know, you touch it and you can squish it, right? But this has substance to it. But what I really like about it is that it's still a little bit on the lighter end, but it has that beautiful sourdough flavor and smell. Like when you smell it, it has sweetness, it's kind of tangy, and it's just absolutely delicious. And how simple to make. The flour, the sourdough culture, a little bit of salt, a little bit of technique that I showed you, and you will have an absolutely delicious way of making bread that is not only good, but it's really healthy for you. That soaking unlocks a lot of B vitamins, and you can actually digest this. So a lot of times people can digest the sourdough bread a lot easier over just making bread with yeast. So I'm going to continue to enjoy. One of the favorite ways I love eating bread. Tidy up here, and the next video I'm going to show you how to problem solve your sourdough culture. So there's some few questions that tons of people ask me, and I'm going to problem solve that, how you can fix your culture, but also how to take a break from your sourdough culture. What happens if you're gone for a few weeks, a few months? What do you do? So that's going to be on the next video with this series. The Everything Stevia cookbook is coming out in fall 2022. If you'd like to check out our website, it'll be on there when it's coming out. It'll also be on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook. But you can definitely follow us here on YouTube, or you can subscribe on our website and you'll get up-to-dates when I write a blog. And this recipe, like this recipe here, will be on the blog, on the food blog. So check that out. You can go to everything-homemade.com. And once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.